Hey everybody, welcome to Timeout with Tackle What's Next. I am your host Danielle Berman, and we are here every week live to chat with athletes and executives about how sport has made a difference and changed their trajectory in their life and the lessons they've learned in life after the game. And today we are chatting with Jonathan Van Horn. Jonathan is the Associate National Director of Pro Soccer, at Athletes in Action, and he works there with pro athletes to be better leaders through faith. And he has also created the Shift course and is the co-host of the Shift podcast. His Shift course is a 5-step framework to assist athletes through their transition to life after sports and really helps them discover who they are, what's their why, what their experience is, and really help them successfully step into their next arena. And he hosts the Shift podcast. He stays busy. He and his co-host Wells help other athletes share their journey through transition, both in and out of their respective sport. And as a bonus, right now, through August 31st, Jonathan has been kind enough to offer his Shift course to our Tackle What's Next network for free using a unique discount code he created. So if you're interested in that course, you want the link, let us know. I took the course. I really benefited a lot from it. So I thought it was great that Jonathan wanted to offer that to our network and give our network a chance to benefit from it too. So if you want that, there's 2 ways to get it. 1, subscribe to our newsletter. We added in today's newsletter, and we'll have it in next week's newsletter before the code expires. Or 2, DM us here on Instagram and we can send you the link and the code and you can take advantage of it. So thanks again to Jonathan for that awesome offer. And I'm going to bring him on screen right now so we can get right to it. Here he comes. Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
Sydney, how you doing tonight?
I'm good. Thanks again for being here and taking a time out with us, as we like to say here.
Glad to join you tonight.
Yeah, so how's everything been? Like I was just kind of reading a little bit of what you've been up to, and you've got a lot of things going on. So what's been moving the past few months?
Well, it's interesting when life sort of changes drastically, you look to pivot and make some changes. And so you mentioned the podcast. That was something that I had been thinking about and processing and just milling over. Do I do it? Don't I? And then when everything with COVID-19 hit and the quarantine and the shutdown, I'm like, oh hey, I have this time. Let's maximize it. And so put some feelers out there and started chatting with Wells Thompson about getting it started. And then we're like, yeah, let's do it. And so a lot of athletes were just hanging out at home, working out at home, and that was really it. And so guys had time to jump on a call, interview, and connect. And that's where we're at now. So we just finished up recording our 13th episode yesterday.
Yeah.
So talked about that. We've dropped 9 episodes, but like I said, we already got 4 in the hopper, editing phase, and ready to be launched in the next few weeks.
Well, congratulations. That's really exciting. And I feel like it's a great opportunity for athletes to share their stories. Podcasting such a great medium for that. Is
Absolutely.
that something, the Shift course and the Shift podcast, is that something that you started during the pandemic because of? I believe you had started it before. So has it pivoted at all because of everything going on?
A little bit, but what I realized was I've been working with professional athletes for about 12 years. And one of the things that I learned pretty quickly was the transition to life after playing professionally was not easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's Broke on the 30 for 30 document, or a lot of other just news and just things that would be out there on ESPN about, certain players, being duped by a financial planner or
Right.
something broke after a certain amount of years after, finishing up. And then firsthand working with these pro athletes and just seeing them struggle a year or 2 after they're out. And I'm like, something's got to change. And I started doing a little bit of research and just trying to figure out what's available. And there wasn't really a ton. So this is probably about 6 or 7 years ago. And there really wasn't a ton of like concrete content other than, maybe working a resume or something like that, just more practical stuff. And I really wanted to help guys more in the emotional, the psychological, and the spiritual space of really understanding who they are. Because part from my story as well as part of the struggle that I had. I played in university, played soccer and basketball in college, and I struggled with that when I finished playing. Like the reality of so much of my identity and my value and my worth was tied to my sport, and all of a sudden this thing that I've loved to do and have given my life to is now gone.
Yeah.
And that was really what I began to connect the dots a little bit and realize, okay, let's try to put some content together to help guys in this space, help athletes in this space, and that's where we're at today with Shift. And that Shift came out of that process personally, and then also working collectively with a couple pro guys that had just recently retired and said, hey, let's let's really hone some of the content and really put it in a way that's transferable. And shift is one of those things.
Yeah. And what are maybe one or two of those big things that you found do help athletes, whether it was yourself as you were transitioning out or those athletes you've been working with? What are one of those
Yeah.
things?
A couple of things is realizing that your value and who you are as a person is not directly related to your performance. As athletes know, our performance is up and down. Like some days we play great, sometimes we play poorly, and the goal is to be as consistent as possible. But if you derive your value and your significance and who you are from your performance, one day, hey, I'm the greatest, and the next day, like I'm awful, and that's just not. So one, it's not healthy or anything like that, but it's just an emotional roller coaster you go on. So it's helping guys realize that who they are as a person, as a human, their value is outside of their performance. Just what they offer community, society, their families. Who they are as a person is greater than just what they do on the field or off. So that was one of the biggest things. And then also just reality that their sport, their job doesn't define them. In addition to the people that are in the sport, commentators, media, fans, what they say about you doesn't define you either. Media can be brutal.
Yeah.
Can be just harsh and just cruel sometimes. And so can fans. And realizing that what people are saying about you isn't true. Like it's not something that you have to say, well, they said I'm bad, so therefore I must be bad. And just it's understanding how do you eliminate those limiting beliefs and recognizing the lies that you've heard as an athlete so often.
Right.
And understanding the truths about who you are is that you're cared for, you have value as a person. You're more important than just your sport. You have more to offer than just what you can do on the court, stuff like that.
Yeah, those are both really great points. And I think the identity piece is something that you've kind of picked up on and really like not wrapping your identity around what you do for a living and what people say about you online. I think that translates out of the athletic world too, right? That's like anyone, good advice for anyone. Like, don't worry about what people say about you. Just put yourself in a good position where you're not doing that to other people and you feel confident about yourself. And a lot of that stuff doesn't really matter. So I think that's great pieces of advice for athletes. So yeah, I wanted to talk about before we get into kind of when you started with Athletes in Action and your kind of journey to where you are now. Let's go back when you first started playing sports. And I'd like to know, like, what was your first experience and why did soccer become the sport you really decided to pursue?
So growing up, soccer was the sport that you started playing early because 4 or 5 years old, that's just what in the cities, that's just what you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually baseball and basketball and a number of other sports kicked in, track. But for me, soccer was my first love. I still remember 5, 6 years old going early morning. We played at this elementary school. And I remember just the smell of the fresh cut grass, seeing some of the sun coming up, the sunrise, just little things like that, where I just remember just amazing memories and just saying, I love this game. I love this sport. And which is funny because I come from a farming community up in Michigan where it was baseball, basketball, and football. And you didn't play those sports and you were fast, you ran track. And if you weren't fast and you were bad at everything else, then you played soccer. So it was one of those communities, and I just fell in love with the game. It wasn't that I didn't have opportunities to play those other sports, those other games, but I fell in love with the game itself, with soccer, and so I just continued to play the game. I pursued that through high school at club level, and then eventually going into playing in university as well.
Yeah, that I think that's great. And I feel like it's like you said, a lot of kids start playing soccer. It's a good like I don't want to say starter sport, but it's where a lot of parents are like, oh, sports, let's just sign them up for soccer, right? So it's interesting that a lot of people's first sport or first sports love is soccer. I think they got a lot going for them in terms of that aspect. But I want to know also, what did playing sports from a young age, like what impact has it had on you now, who you are today, on your life now moving forward?
Yeah, I think one of the things was it was simplicity. You know, sport oftentimes is not overly complicated. It doesn't have to be. It can be simple. And that was one of the things I learned early on was just keep it simple, but you got to put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
Simple, but you have to put the work in. You got to work hard. You got to put your effort. You got to give 110%, and the success will come. But you have to you got to put the work in. But it's simple. Don't overcomplicate things as you compete as an athlete.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think it again like applies to that transition too, where I think your course does a really great job of simplifying some of the big pieces of what you need to start understanding and kind of taking them in small chunks and saying, hey, we're not going to understand the way of the world by the end of this course, right? We're not going to master the universe, but we can start with like, what's your story? What do you enjoy? Who are you? Like start small. And like you said, I think simplicity is great and a great point for everyone to keep in mind that's thinking about transitioning in life after sports is like simple is always good. It's never a bad thing. So I wanted to see now you've worked with athletes in action for a long time. You're working with athletes through your shift course and podcast. Why is supporting other athletes in their transition so important to you, and why are these organizations and programs you've created, such a big part of your life?
So I got involved with Athletes in Action when I was in university. It's a Christian-based organization working to serve, support, and mentor athletes at the university and pro level. And I got involved with them when I was playing, and then from there, I was really encouraged and challenged to step into the professional soccer world. Major League Soccer was just started. It had been probably about 2 or 3 years or so at that point in time as a pro league. It was still getting going, still pretty young, and yeah, and I just was like, I want to take something that's important to me, my faith, but also I have a desire to coach and to build into people and really help people grow and become their best true selves. And as a result of that, I was able to match those two things from a faith, also being a coach, mentor, and builder of people. And then sort of the cherry on top was I got to work within soccer, which is a sport that I love to be around. And so just sort of a lot of the worlds that were important to me were able to mesh and to be integrated.
Yeah, that's great. And I think you mentioned to us what advice you've learned from those experiences that you would give to athletes. I'm wondering if you have any advice for maybe your younger self as you were transitioning that maybe other athletes could take to heart as well as they're starting to make their journey out of sports. Is there anything you'd say to a younger Jonathan, here's what I would do differently, or here's, a piece of advice I'd give you?
Take the risk. That's something like looking back, like the things that I wish I would have said yes to, that I was more hesitant. I would put myself out there, taking a risk, and take the risk. It's worth it. Even if you're cut or released or you're told you're not good enough yet, take the risk. I remember when I was 16, I tried out for a semi-professional team, and they just said, you know what, you're too young. Come back in 2 years. And I was 15 at the time. They're like, you're good enough, but you're just too young. Fair enough. And I never went back. And it was one of those things. Looking back, it was one of the top semi-pro teams in the Midwest at the time. A lot of top university players, Indiana, Ohio State University, Michigan had players on the team, and so they said, "Come back when you're 17 or so, and we want to have you on this team." And I just never went back. Never took the risk to go back, and I played it more safe. Still had a great college career, but I remember just thinking through. I'm like, it's okay to take risks. And it's important to, because you're being able to put yourself out there and like I said, at the end of the day, no's are not final. They're just realizing that you're just that much closer to your next yes. And that's if I looked at my younger self, that's what I would say is like, take the risk. It's worth it.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice because it can be really hard to transition from such a very intense routine, high energy job, all kinds of things that you're doing, right? And you're playing at such a high level, right? So you're playing such a high level, then you want to pivot to something else. And it's kind of like, do I start at the bottom? Where do I go? And it's almost like you're going to hear some no's from some of these opportunities that you're going to want to get involved in. Maybe you're not ready, right, to start out as a director of something at an organization, or maybe you're not ready to start your own business. You figure that out. But I love that a no is just one step closer to an eventual yes. And I think taking that to heart, that it is that hard work, keeping that mindset right of you're going to hear no, just get over that. You're going to hear no, and you just got to make it a yes, right? You got to keep working until you make it a yes. So that's awesome. Final couple questions for you here, Jonathan, as we wrap up. What is the best or the skill you use the most, I guess I should say, that sport taught you in your work right now? It could be one or two. I know
Uh,
it's
for sure, the first one is adaptability. Change is inevitable. Like, with soccer, you can't call a timeout. You can't just stop the play. Like, you have 45 minutes where you're just competing, and things are shifting and changing constantly. And that was one of the things I learned within the sport to develop, to understanding momentum swings and understanding how you change and how things shift and move throughout a game. And yeah, and that's something that even today, like that's change is inevitable. And like so we've drastically experienced with COVID and what's happening in our world today. But it's just, and change is okay.
Yeah.
You know, not only is that adaptability, but realizing that changes aren't bad. Changes are opportunities. So those are two things that, especially within sport, when there's whether it's a turnover or even a bad call or something, there's those little moments of change are opportunities for success. And it's the same is true in life, is that anytime there's an opportunity for change, there's an opportunity for change, there's an opportunity for success.
That's great. I think that's a great piece of advice to leave everyone on. So as we close out, Jonathan, what's coming up for you? What's next with the podcast, with the course, with Athletes in Action, and how can people learn more?
Yeah, so what's coming up is we're still launching the podcast. Like so, we got 4 more in the editing phase that we're dropping here in the next couple, 3-4 weeks. So we're stoked about that. Hoping to connect with a couple more athletes. Then from a shift perspective, it's just continue to get the word out there. You know, I want to see, I want to see as many athletes as possible helps while they're competing as well as to make transition to life after playing professionally. And I truly believe that shift is a resource, a tool that can really help athletes. And so it's continue to encourage and get the word out there. You know, there's so much noise in social media and stuff going on right now in our world. Just being intentional to get the right tools in the right spaces with the right people. And so working on that. And then professional sport is on the way back up. You know, you have some people that are competing, no fans yet for the most part. So there's some fans in some of the stadiums in the United Soccer League, in the second division, pro division in the U.S. There are some fans in some places. But it's just helping those guys in the midst as they transition back to actually competing. So just being from a mental standpoint, from a coaching standpoint, and just off the field stuff, helping guys in that space, and then also training the other life coaches and character coaches that I work with and train, just helping them as well as be effective as possible in this new digital era and phase that we're in right now.
Yeah, and how can people connect with you, connect with Shift, or with Athletes in Action that want to learn more?
Website, jonathanvanhorn.com. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me, contact me that way. Instagram, JD Van Horn is Instagram. Facebook as well, Twitter, across the table. So all those things. And then the Shift course, it's basically just theshiftcourse.com. And so just you can jump on there, theshiftcourse.com, to be able to check out the course.
Awesome. Well, Jonathan, thanks so much for being here and taking the time out with us. This was a lot of fun. And I hope everyone watching got a lot out of this. Make sure you go follow Jonathan. Make sure you check out his Shift course. And again, if you want to take advantage of our special offer, DM us on Instagram or sign up for our newsletter. We're sharing information out that way. It's a really awesome course. So thanks again, Jonathan, for being here and for all your support to tackle what's next.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. And everyone will be back next week with another awesome guest. Have a great Wednesday. Bye.